Hey guys, Matt from the Rational Rant, and today's video is going to be starting a new series that I feel like is very important and I really want to share it with you guys. And it's going to be talking about the biggest global threat that we are facing this century. That is human-induced climate change. Now, to start this video off, if you deny the inevitability of climate change and how humans have an impact on the environment, then you're basically remaining ignorant to basic facts. I mean, the majority of climate scientists around the world, over 99% of them, agree that climate change exists, and the numbers in the data is overwhelming. You're in the minority if you don't agree. But either way, just to get that out of the way first. Today's episode is going to be talking about global sea level rise and how it can specifically affect a country like the United States. Now, since I'm from the United States and specifically from Florida, that's the kind of context that I want to put this in. And Florida is one of the states that's going to get hit the hardest by this within the next 20 years or so. But I also want to give you guys kind of a timeline of how this is going to change as time goes on, and we're going to delve into the numbers and just start looking at some of this. Kind of scary. But regardless, it's good to know now so that we can plan for the future, and hopefully it will provide a sense of urgency to anybody watching this to get out there and say something about it. I mean, this is the biggest issue that we're going to face within the next 100 years, and the sooner we start to solve it, the better we're going to be off in the future. Okay, so if we look at this chart right here, we are raising about 3.5 millimeters per year. And this is very, very shocking because, as the years progress, this rate is going to increase and increase as the planet gets warmer and warmer and as we impact it more. Now, this is only from 1993 to the present, but the global trend is getting even more steep as time goes on. And due to that, if it continued at this current rate, let's say 15 years from now, the oceans would have risen about 50 millimeters, which might not seem like a lot, but 10 years from now, this rate could quadruple or even, times 6 or times 10, depending on how hot the planet gets. So instead of 3 millimeters a year, it could be 20 or 30. And when this occurs, it's going to keep on going and going and going as the overall temperature of the Earth increases. And there is one website that I would like to have you guys visit. This is NOAA, the National Association of Oceanic, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And they have this really cool tool called the Sea Level Rise Viewer. And if you click launch, or you can just download it yourself, it'll bring you to this nifty little program here. So I am focusing on my hometown, which is Jacksonville, Florida. Zoom out a little bit to give you context. Here's Florida, northeast up here. So specifically, I am actually from the beaches. So here is an even further look near my hometown. Now, from my perspective, this is obviously going to affect me a lot because we literally live right on the intercoastal, and even a minuscule rise in sea level is going to affect the geography of the area a lot, and obviously ecosystems as well. So the increments that the sea level rise goes by is by feet. So 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, all the way up to 6 feet. So if we look at the legend here, obviously blue is water. Any of the green areas, the light green, are very, very low-lying areas. If we zoom out a little bit more, there's areas with lines. Those are the areas that haven't been mapped. So thankfully, where I'm from, it has been mapped. And, there's pictures that we can click on and whatnot. But we are just going to focus here. Okay. So we have Jacksonville Beach, Neptune Beach, we have the Intercoastal. Okay, so and another thing is we do not have any levees around where I'm from too. So this not only coincides with the coast of Florida, but any area or city that is on the eastern or western seaboard or southern seaboard, or on the Gulf Coast, you could say, is going to be drastically affected within the next 20 to 30 years geographically of this change. So it probably would take about 40 to 50 years for the sea levels to rise, up to a level of like 6 feet. Um, if the rate keeps on increasing, which obviously it would. But this is very telling because we already see signs of, the increase today. And from when I was a kid, I even noticed some geographical changes from my hometown. And it's honestly pretty frightening because there are a lot of people who live on or near the marsh that are going to have to be relocated. And it's going to shake up a lot of industry. It's going to ruin infrastructure that is close to these water areas. And obviously, this doesn't apply just to Florida. I mean, Louisiana is another state that's going to get hit very, very hard by these changes. Um, I mean, California is going to be another state too. A few states on the eastern seaboard up near Massachusetts, some of the more low-lying areas, obviously. But anywhere next to the ocean is going to be very, very adversely affected. So, all right. Sorry for blabbing so much. Let's go ahead and look at what this change is going to be like. So this is with 1 foot. Now, all the light blue are the areas that have been turned into water. So if we look at it, we are starting to encroach upon road. We are starting to encroach upon developments. 1 foot isn't necessarily horrible. I mean, it's just getting some of the more low-lying swamp areas. But, it's definitely enough to obviously change the geography. Look at all these smaller land and swamp areas that are just being gobbled up. And, it's probably going to affect roads such as the one from Dutton Island to Pine Island. And, it might even affect some of the bridge infrastructure as well. So that'd be 1 foot. I'd imagine that would happen within the next probably, uh, but we'll see. So this is 2 feet. Now this is getting a bit more destructive in scope. It is heavily starting to encroach upon developments. This is a pretty, you could say, wealthy neighborhood over here. This is near Harbor, all up in this area. Really starting to encroach upon that. Um, Starting to get into some of the neighborhoods that are on the coast, and honestly, this is when we would really, really start to notice some of the change because we also have little tributaries that come in through the beaches, and those are going to be heavily flooded. So 2 feet, I think, would take about 15 years if the rate keeps on increasing. So let's go ahead and do 3 feet. Now this is when it starts to get a little more scary because a lot of boat docks are starting to go underwater. This is a boat dock area. Most of the islands on the intercoastal are going to be underwater, which is obviously a scary thing. So we're not really going to have access to a lot of the previous geography. And it is really, really starting to affect the areas that are close to intercoastal water sources, such as Queens Harbor, once again. A lot of it is going to be underwater. I mean, it's starting to creep in through the intercoastal right over here. And, this tributary going this way is really, really starting to affect this golf course right here. And, you know, it's really, really starting to get out of the way. Um, Cradle. Yeah, so 3 feet, it's not getting necessarily into the beaches. I mean, it is a little bit. It's actually kind of near where my high school was, and it's starting to be affected a little bit, but not to the point to where, anything on the land in this area is going to be underwater. But here's the kicker. Go ahead and raise it to 4 feet. Now, when we do so, we actually do start to see it encroaching upon some of the living areas. Now, Hopkins Creek is how Neptune Beach and Jacksonville Beach gets, some of its fresh water source. And when it rises 4 feet, it's starting to flood over into neighborhoods and local businesses and schools and whatnot. And some of our water routes are starting to spill over into communities and whatnot. So if we don't put up levees around these smaller little rivers and creeks, they're really going to provide an issue in the coming year. So 4 feet, I would say that would happen in about 30 years, if the trends keep on going as they are. But I could be wrong. It could happen faster depending on if the trends are rising exponentially, which at this point they kind of are. Um, and I could be a little off late wise, but since the trend is going up, I like to keep it more on the upper side of numerical values. So 4 feet. Let's go back to Queens Harbor. Yeah, a lot of houses are starting to get underwater, and even this little island and this little island, which is filled with houses as well, are going to and zoom in a little. Well, yeah. Either way, really, really starting to creep in. A lot of these housing developments are going to be changing. And here, let's zoom out from Jacksonville. Let's move up the coast. Actually, let's go to Louisiana. As I mentioned, Louisiana is another state that's going to be very, very hard by this. So I'm not familiar with the geography of Louisiana that much. I've actually never been to the state. But if we look towards the Gulf Coast, you go back to 0 feet. So this is a lot of the swamps, a lot of the lower lying Gulf areas. 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot. It really, really is encroaching upon, especially New Orleans, Baton Rouge. It is affecting the geography very heavily, and it's almost turning these into peninsulas. I mean, New Orleans is already kind of a peninsula, but if you raise it 4 feet, definitely affects it. So that's a pretty crazy geographical change. It's almost going to kneecap the boot off of Louisiana. But let's go up the coast a little bit more with 4 feet sea level rise. Let's look near Washington, D.C. Looks like the biggest change up here is going to be near Dorchester, Dorchester, Maryland. Um, um, yeah, that's pretty significant, taking out a whole chunk of the geography right there. Go up the coast a little bit more. It's not obviously as bad if the land is, 5, 10 feet above sea level. You're not going to see that much of a geographical change. But once again, the heart of the issue is that this trend is exponentially growing. So the rate at which this occurring is, increasing at an ever-growing pace. And that's why we need to slow it down and then reach the point where we can stop it in order to not have to divert so many resources to dealing with, evacuating all these people, changing the landscape, and making sure that it doesn't damage further inward towards the eastern, western Gulfs. So getting up near Maine. Yeah, just a lot of the. Yeah, let's check out Massachusetts. Um, Not affecting Massachusetts as much as I thought it would, but once again, we're only at 4 feet. Now, unfortunately, this projection only goes to 6 feet maximum. So we're gonna go back down to maximum. Um, but even with a 4 to 6 foot sea level rise, the damage is already going to be, and the amount of resources that we're going to have to divert to fixing an issue like this is going to be very, very strict. All right, so now that I'm blabbing for a sec, I can raise it up to 5 feet. Back to Queens Harbor area. So 5 feet. Queens Harbor is definitely going to have to be evacuated in some areas. Basically, all the islands on the intercoastal are underwater. Um, there are even a lot of houses that are going to be underwater as well. Ooh, the Marsh Landing Country Club. Wow, that is a big, big suburban area. Even encroaching into Ponte Vedra is going to be changed pretty drastically as well. That's actually where my parents live now. That is very, very crazy to see. Now, as we get more inward, obviously it's not going to affect it much, but just looking at near the coast here, it's going to be very, very devastating. And the amount of resources we're going to have to commit to evacuating all these people when it reaches that point is going to be. So let's go ahead and kick it up to 6 feet. Y'all have probably been waiting for that. 6 feet versus 5 feet. This is really, really starting to affect the beaches now. This is all a pretty suburban area right in here. And it is pouring over into a lot of the residential areas. This is 3rd Street. This is this is old A1A, this biggest road near this area. And a lot of flooding near local houses and businesses. Wherever there's water, there's essentially going to be an overflow. And if it's touching the intercoastal, it's going to be even worse than thought. Now, it is even flooding over into some suburban areas. And let's check out that Queens Harbor area. Yeah, Queens Harbor at this point has pretty much shrunk by half. Their golf course is half underwater. A lot of their inner houses that are connected to the tributaries and outside are going to be cut off from the other side. And it is really, really changing the landscape. So that is going to be crazy. 6 feet is going to occur, in my estimation, within the next 40 to 50 years. Once again, with the exponential rise, I think at that time it'll be around 40 millimeters a year that we would see sea level rise. But once again, I could obviously be wrong. But just looking at the trends here, it is very, very, very bad. And let's go ahead and do one more little zoom out here. That was just my home area near Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra. St. Augustine's obviously going to be affected. Check out the Florida coast. Ooh, a lot of Miami. A lot. I have family. Wow. Yeah, Miami is going to have to be heavily, heavily evacuated. Or heavily, heavily levied. Not even Miami, even into Hollywood, Pembroke Pines, Plantation, Fort Lauderdale. all these areas are going to be significantly changed. And I haven't even looked at the keys yet either. Oh, wow. Yeah, the keys are basically, I mean, that's not really surprising, but wow, Louisiana, the boot has essentially been cut off. The only thing that is allowing it to survive is the levee that has been put up right along outskirts area. Yellow. Um, but I mean, still, levees can only do so much when the ocean gets so big. They're either going to have to be reinforced further, which requires more resources to do so, or everybody's just going to have to be, unless they want to live on water. Not funny, but so let's go ahead and do one more preliminary search. That was New Orleans. We looked at Keys. We looked at Florida. Up near Washington D.C. This is with 6 feet. Virginia. Wow. North Carolina, definitely along the coast is going to be changed a lot. The Maryland and Delaware area is going to be heavily affected as well. I do believe that near Washington D.C. it's going to be levied off pretty well. Just resources that our government would be willing to commit to that. So I don't think it's going to be affected much there by 6 feet. But once it starts pushing up to 8, 9, even 10 feet, really going to. So we're just moving up towards Maine, border of the US. Yeah, I mean, not much change up north. That's just because the sea level difference is pretty high. But once again, this is from my perspective. I'm from Florida, born and raised. One thing we haven't done, I apologize, is check West Coast. Although I kind of figured that the West Coast would not be affected as much uh, due to the amount of preparation. Washington, not affected much. California, not affected much. This is by 6 feet, by the way. Um, I mean, maybe near San Fran and Oakland, but mm, maybe near Napa Valley, California. Besides that, I'm not seeing much of it in California. So it looks like it's going to be affecting the East Coast a bit more than it would be other coasts. But once again, this is only with 6 feet. So as the trend increases exponentially, we could see it, very, very much reaching a tipping point. And some have already estimated that we have reached that tipping point. And unless we make drastic shifts, the trend is not going to get better as time goes on. So, to my conclusion, um, we need change. We need to stop this. We need to prioritize, and as Bernie Sanders said, treat climate change like a World War II level threat. We are going to start seeing fresh water shortages, crop famines and crop failures, and geographical changes that are going to severely, severely affect the economies and societies of different nations around the world. And this is just in the context of the United States from what we were looking at. This isn't even accounting for places like India, the coast of Africa, UK, um, Finland, Sweden, and the Baltic Bay in that area, and even, Japan and Australia in, South America. Pretty much anywhere on the world where there's a coast, they're going to be affected very heavily by these changes. And Florida was just a little microcosm for what a lot of these coastal areas could look like. And that's going to cause a lot of societal issues. And that's not going to obviously be helped by the fact that we are going to see crop shortage, fresh water shortage, which is going to lead to further issues down the road. But it is up to us to change it. It is up to us. And we have the ability to. We just got to go out there, say something. That's why the Dakota Access Pipeline protests are so important, and everybody needs to be supporting them, not only for the environmental cause, but also for the respect of the people that live there as well. We are a part of the environment. We are a product of the environment, and we cannot treat it as something that is separate from human physiology and biology, because if we ruin it, we're ruining ourselves. But thank you guys so much for watching. This is pretty fun. Hope I didn't blab too much. But make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, stay rational.